The morning sun streamed into the luxurious lobby of Prime Tech Solutions. James, a 68-year-old Nigerian man with neatly combed gray hair, a faded navy blue cleaner's uniform, and well-polished but worn black shoes, moved slowly across the marble floor with his mop. "Look at him," Ritha whispered, adjusting her tight red pencil skirt and white chiffon blouse. "Doesn't he look like he belongs in a village not here?" Ruth, in her fitted navy blue dress and pointed black heels, smirked. "Honestly, why do they even hire old people? He'll probably mop the same spot all day." James lifted his head and gave them a polite nod. "Good morning, ladies." They exchanged a quick glance before Ruth replied mockingly. "Morning, sir. Oh, wait. Should we call you Grandpa Cleaner?" Ritha burst out laughing. James simply smiled faintly and continued mopping. But behind his calm eyes, there was a quiet strength, one they hadn't noticed. "Watch, Ruth," Ritha said under her breath. "I'll make sure he spills his bucket just for fun." As they giggled and walked away, neither of them could imagine that the man they mocked had once signed multi-million naira deals in an office far grander than this. By mid-morning, the lobby buzzed with activity. James carried a mop and bucket toward the reception desk where Ritha and Ruth were leaning casually, chatting with the receptionist. "Oh, here comes the mop master," Ritha said loudly, causing nearby employees to turn. Ruth grinned. "Careful, ladies, or he might splash your designer shoes." James placed a mop in the bucket and calmly replied, "Some shoes cost a lot, but respect is priceless." The receptionist, Ada, frowned. "That's not nice, Ritha. Mr. James is just doing his job." Ritha rolled her eyes. "Relax, Ada, it's just harmless fun." James wiped the counter slowly. "Sometimes harmless fun can leave lasting scars," he said softly, before walking away. "Did you hear that?" Ruth whispered. "He talks like he's some big man." Ritha chuckled. "Please, he's probably never owned more than that mop." But Ada stared after James, her curiosity growing. She had seen the way he carried himself, almost like a man used to giving orders, not taking them. The next day, Ruth walked into the lobby holding a takeaway coffee cup, her navy blue handbag swinging on her arm. She spotted James mopping near the elevators. "Grandpa Cleaner," she called, waving the cup. "Bet you've never had coffee this expensive in your life." James looked up, smiling politely. "Coffee's just coffee, my dear. It's not about the price, but the warmth it gives." Ritha, joining her friend, smirked. "Let's see if it warms the floor, too." She pretended to trip, spilling coffee dangerously close to James's freshly mopped area. "Oh, no." Ruth gasped, feigning innocence. "Guess you have more work to do, Grandpa." James sighed and began wiping the mess. A clean floor can be dirted in seconds, just like a good reputation. They laughed and walked off, but Ada, who had been watching from the reception desk, frowned deeply. Something about the way James spoke, calm yet weighted with meaning, made her wonder who he really was. The next morning, James was cleaning the stainless steel walls of the elevator when Ritha walked in, wearing her fitted green dress with gold buttons and black high heels. She wrinkled her nose. "Do you have to do this now?" she asked sharply. "Some of us don't want to smell disinfectant first thing in the morning." James looked at her calmly. "Some of us don't want to smell pride every morning either," he said quietly. Before Ritha could reply, Ruth stepped in, wearing a white blouse tucked into a navy blue skirt. "There you are. You're holding up the elevator with your mop parade again." James pressed the button to hold the doors. "Go ahead, ladies. I'll take the next ride." As the doors closed, Ritha muttered, "We should tell management he's slowing things down." "Definitely," Ruth replied, smirking. "Maybe then they'll hire someone younger." What they didn't notice was the building's head of HR, Mrs. Ease, standing nearby, watching the entire scene unfold. She had a feeling these two were in for a surprise soon. By lunchtime, the office canteen was buzzing. Ritha and Ruth sat at a corner table, sipping juice. "You know what I heard?" Ruth began, leaning forward. "The cleaner, James, used to work for some big company years ago, probably as a security guard or something." Ritha laughed. "Well, if that's true, he downgraded big time. James walked past their table with a tray of simple jollof rice and plantain. "Good afternoon, ladies," he greeted warmly. "Afternoon," Ritha replied with a fake smile. "Enjoy your humble meal." James smiled faintly. "It's not the size of the meal that matters, but the peace it brings." As he walked away, two other employees at the next table exchanged curious glances. "There's something about him," one whispered. "He doesn't carry himself like an ordinary cleaner." Ruth caught the comment and rolled her eyes. "Please don't start rumors." But deep down, both she and Ritha were beginning to feel a strange unease they couldn't. The lobby was so quiet you could hear a pen drop. James stood beside Mr. Maxwell, still in his neat but faded navy blue cleaner's uniform, while the CEO kept his arm around his shoulder. "Father?" Ritha whispered to Ruth, her voice trembling. "Yes," Ruth replied in disbelief. "The cleaner is the CEO's father." Maxwell looked around at the stunned staff. "I'm proud of this man." Before retiring, he built businesses that gave hundreds of people jobs. He chose to work here not because he needs money, but because he hates being idle. James gave a humble smile. "And I get to meet young people who remind me of myself in both good and bad ways." His eyes lingered briefly on Ritha and Ruth, who looked away instantly. Ritha, dressed in her bright red blazer, suddenly felt the color drain from her cheeks. Ruth clutched her cream handbag tightly, wishing she could vanish. Maxwell glanced at them. "Some of you might have treated him poorly, without knowing who he was. But remember, respect is not given because of status. It's given because we are all human." Later that day, Ritha and Ruth were summoned to the CEO's office. They entered nervously, dressed more modestly than usual. Ritha in a simple black dress, Ruth in a navy skirt and white blouse. Maxwell sat behind his mahogany desk. James seated calmly beside him. "Do you know why you're here?" Maxwell asked firmly. "Yes, sir," Ruth answered softly. "It's about how we treated Mr. James." James spoke gently. "I don't hold grudges, but I hope you understand how words can wound." Ritha's eyes welled up. "We're sorry, sir. Truly, we didn't know." Maxwell leaned forward. "That's the point. You didn't have to know. Whether he's my father or a stranger, he deserves respect." The two women nodded, shame written all over their faces. "Consider this a lesson," Maxwell continued. "Your future in this company depends on how you treat people." By the next morning, the entire office knew the truth. James arrived in his cleaner's uniform as usual, but the air around him had changed. Colleagues greeted him warmly, some even offering to help carry his bucket. At the coffee station, two junior staff whispered, "Can you believe Ritha and Ruth used to mock him? Now they're acting like saints." Ritha, in a navy sheath dress, and Ruth, in a cream blazer over black trousers, walked in with 4 smiles. "Good morning, Mr. James," they said almost in unison. James nodded politely. "Morning, ladies." His voice was kind, but there was a quiet firmness in his eyes. Ada, the receptionist, smirked from her desk. "Funny how tables turn, isn't it?" she muttered under her breath. That afternoon, Maxwell joined his father in the lobby for lunch. "Ready to go, Dad?" "Yes," James said, glancing around at the staff. "But first, I want to thank everyone for reminding me that humility and respect are still the highest qualifications anyone can have." The word stung Ritha and Ruth, but they knew deep down they had learned their lesson the hard way. Monday morning, the staff gathered in the conference room for a surprise announcement. James stood at the front, still in his neatly pressed navy blue cleaner's uniform, while Maxwell addressed the employees. "From today," Maxwell began, "my father will be leading short weekly sessions on workplace ethics and humility." Ritha, wearing a fitted teal dress with gold buttons, whispered to Ruth, who was in a crisp white blouse and black pencil skirt, "We're going to be trained by him." James smiled at the group. "I may not have a management title anymore, but I've learned a lot about people and how quickly pride can blind us." His gaze briefly rested on Ritha and Ruth, who lowered their eyes. During the Q&A, an employee asked, "Sir, what's the most important quality in a workplace?" James replied, "Respect. If you can't respect the lowest position here, you'll never truly respect the highest." By the end of the session, there was an uneasy silence among a few staff, but a glimmer of admiration was beginning to grow in others. 2 days later, James was mopping near the lobby entrance when a client entered, a wealthy-looking woman in an Ankara maxi dress and head wrap. She tripped on the mat, but before she could fall, James quickly steadied her. "Are you all right, madam?" he asked kindly. "Yes, thank you," she smiled warmly. "Such a gentleman." The receptionist, Ada, nodded. "That's Mr. James. He's the CEO's father." The client's eyes widened. "Really? No wonder he has such class." Ritha, in a maroon skirt suit, and Ruth, in a mustard blouse with navy trousers, stood nearby, overhearing the praise. Ritha whispered, "We look so foolish now." Ruth sighed, "We do, and I'm starting to feel bad for real." James, noticing them, said, "It's never too late to change, ladies. But change isn't about what people see. It's about what happens when no one's watching." The words hit deeper than they expected. On Friday afternoon, Maxwell called Ritha and Ruth into his office. They entered nervously, Ritha in a navy wrap dress, Ruth in a cream blazer over a patterned skirt. "I want to give you both a chance to prove you've learned something," Maxwell began. "There's a new intern starting next week. She's young, inexperienced, and from a humble background. I want you to mentor her." Ritha swallowed hard. "Yes, sir." Ruth nodded. "We'll do our best." James, seated beside Maxwell, added, "This isn't just about teaching her the job. It's about showing her kindness without expecting anything in return." The two women exchanged a glance. They knew this was their moment to either redeem themselves or confirm everyone's doubts. As they left the office, Ruth whispered, "This feels like a test." "It is," Ritha replied quietly. "And this time we can't fail." On Friday afternoon, Maxwell called Ritha and Ruth into his office. They entered nervously, Ritha in a navy wrap dress, Ruth in a cream blazer over a patterned skirt. "I want to give you both a chance to prove you've learned something," Maxwell began. "There's a new intern starting next week. She's young, inexperienced, and from a humble background. I want you to mentor her." Ritha swallowed hard. "Yes, sir." Ruth nodded. "We'll do our best." James, seated beside Maxwell, added, "This isn't just about teaching her the job. It's about showing her kindness without expecting anything in return." The two women exchanged a glance. They knew this was their moment to either redeem themselves or confirm everyone's doubts. As they left the office, Ruth whispered, "This feels like a test." "It is," Ritha replied quietly. "And this time we can't fail." Monday morning, the new intern walked into the lobby. She was a petite Nigerian girl named Blessing, dressed in a simple knee-length blue gown with flat shoes. She clutched a small handbag nervously. "Hello, you must be Blessing," Ritha greeted, smiling warmly, so different from her old self. Ruth stepped forward. "Come on, we'll show you around." James watched from the corner, leaning on his mop. Ada noticed his faint smile. "You're watching them, aren't you?" she teased. "Of course," James replied. True change is proven in small moments. Throughout the day, Ritha and Ruth patiently taught Blessing how to handle office calls, arrange documents, and communicate with clients. They even treated her to lunch at the canteen. At the end of the day, Blessing whispered, "Thank you for being so kind. I was scared I wouldn't fit in." Ritha's heart tightened. She remembered how she once made others feel. Later that week, Ritha and Ruth approached James in the lobby. Ritha was in a forest green blouse with black trousers. Ruth wore a maroon dress with a thin gold belt. "Mr. James," Ruth began, "we want to apologize again, this time, not because you're the CEO's father, but because we truly see how wrong we were." James looked at them quietly. "And what changed your mind?" Ritha replied, "Blessing, we realize how fragile confidence can be, and how our words can either build or destroy it." James smiled faintly. "Then perhaps you've learned the most valuable lesson in business. People matter more than profits or positions." They stood there in silence for a moment. Then Ritha added, "We hope one day you'll forgive us fully." "I already have," James said warmly. "But the real forgiveness comes from within yourselves." 2 weeks later, Maxwell held a short staff meeting in the lobby. Everyone gathered. Ritha in a mustard blouse and pencil skirt, Ruth in a fitted navy blue dress, Blessing standing shyly beside them. "I called you all here," Maxwell began, "because I've seen growth, not just in our profits, but in our people. Ritha and Ruth, I'm proud of how you've mentored Blessing." The staff applauded, and James stepped forward. "I came here to pass time, but I stayed because I saw a chance to teach something bigger than business, respect." He looked at everyone, his voice steady. "The way you treat those with nothing to offer you is the truest measure of your character." Ritha and Ruth exchanged a glance, their eyes glistening. They knew those words would stay with them forever. As the meeting ended, Blessing whispered to James, "I want to be like you one day." James chuckled softly. "Then start by being kind, my dear. That's the best legacy anyone can leave." And for the first time, the office wasn't just a workplace. It was a place of respect, humility, and second chances.